All right, this is preparing.
A very good evening to everyone, and very good evening to you, Suhel and Vivek. Thank you for accepting our request for an exclusive interview with EdMyst. Uh, Less said, we are delighted at the opportunity for the audience to get your insights on a topical subject of personal branding. Given the current times, it could have not been timelier. We are being live streamed, and there are more audiences across the globe, more than 8 countries watching us right now. Um, Suhail does not need an elaborate introduction, uh, being the maestro and the marketing guru. He comes with a very diverse background as an entrepreneur, business advisor, author, actor. He has seen the world using multiple lenses over his incredible professional and personal journey. From the haloed halls at Jadavpur University to the sophisticated genre of Harvard Business School, from advertisements to activism, and from IIMs to media houses. You've left an indelible legacy. It'll be great to get your perspectives on how topical areas like which are on top of the mind for everyone. In this context of events unfolding around us, many people are worried, anxious, intrigued, and some are even helpless and looking for the right answers. In the context of today's topic, making a personal brand work for you, it'll be helpful for all of us to understand why personal branding still remains a mystery and how to make it work for all of us. Your guidance will provide us a lot of clarity and reassurance on how to make it relevant, how to make ourselves relevant in this rapidly mutating normal. We are looking forward to a great conversation with you.
Thank you. So one of the cornerstones of good personal branding is the truth. I have nothing to do with Harvard Business School. I went there twice. Once for an OMP, their executive programs, and the second is to address the India Harvard, whatever they have, caucus. And so unlike some very famous journalists and not some other famous people, I have nothing to do with Harvard Business School. May God bless them, and may Boston continue to flourish with its intellectual prowess.
But does that Suhail speak of your personal brand, where people are trying to put themselves with you, associate themselves with you, and that elevates their brands themselves?
No, I'm not that stupid to think Harvard Business School needs me to elevate themselves. They are unarguably one of the world's finest academic institutions. They have led the charge with finesse, with great capability and a huge amount of integrity. The many visits that I've made to Cambridge have been remarkable. They've been remarkable learning experiences. I was delighted when Mr. Tata made the endowment, and we now have a Tata Hall. Earlier it was a Baker Hall and this hall and that hall. We now have a Tata Hall in Harvard Business School. I also went there once to speak at the Mahindra Humanities Center, again set up by Anand Mahindra of Mahindra & Mahindra, with the redoubtable Homi Bhabha as the dean in residence. So I've had some good visits, but I think personal branding ultimately is about, one, having a good night's sleep, two, being transparent, and three, not being worried about being popular. Winston Churchill many years ago had said, the only person you've got to be popular with is your wife. I got married only 3 years ago, and after that, I've remained eternally popular with her. For the rest, I don't care.
That's it.
Well said.
So, does it bother you that you have 5 million users on social media, 5 million followers on social media, Suhail?
No, it doesn't bother me. It depends on how you use it. So I primarily use it for three purposes. Number one, I always retweet anything that causes people anguish or distress. I'm not talking about politicians, but things like blood donation, blood drives. In these corona times, people are looking for plasma, to oxygen, to hospital beds, and all of that. And then, of course, I have very sharp views on what needs to be done or what is happening with us, not just in our country, but across the world. So I use it primarily not to vent, but to ascribe an opinion. And I don't really care if people like it or don't like it. It's my thing. I've not put a gun to anyone's head to follow me. You want to unfollow. You want to follow, par for the course. But yes, I'm not going to change the dynamics of my communication principles only because it is a non-populist stand or something that will get me into trouble.
So this is interesting, Suhel, when you talk about, you retweeting things which are very important, especially given the events which are unfolding around us, especially the distress caused by Corona and the damage it is unleashing on our communities. And then bringing the personal branding piece, people look at you as a person with voice. They listen to you, they look at your tweets, they follow you, they retweet themselves. Is personal branding taking on a whole different meaning given the seismic shifts that we are seeing? Earlier, it was digitization was moving us online, and now this Corona has accelerated that whole disruption completely.
Personal branding is not something that is new to civilization. Remember, Vivek, the difference between the country that you live in and the country that I live in and I was born in is that you're the largest democracy. We're the oldest civilization. I mean, the jury is out who's older, but we're amongst the oldest civilizations. If you go back into Indian history, and I only will take you back to, let's say, 2nd or 3rd BC, when you actually had the advent of literature, when you had Manu writing Manu Smriti, when you had people talking about the Shastras, the Vedas, all of that, which has moved forward. We've had brands since. Remember, the day you are named by your parents, you get one level of personal branding. But that personal branding is germane to you and your family. They give you a name. The reason why they give you a name, I mean, if they had said person X who went on a cross, you wouldn't, and you didn't know it was Jesus, you wouldn't be able to associate either the benefits or whatever you believed in. And if you go into history and you look at historical context, sometimes these individuals become who they are because of also what they stand for. Now, if I say that, Vivek's poetry is much like Tagore, I don't need to qualify Sharmila. I know it's Rabindranath Tagore. Or if I say that I'm coming from the land of Gandhi, I don't need to tell people it's Rahul. They know it's Mahatma. So there are very strong associations with personal brands which need to be established. I mean, when Ronald Reagan became president, no one gave him a fighting chance. And today he's hailed as one of America's foremost presidents. Look at Franklin Delano Roosevelt and what Roosevelt did, what Truman did, what Eisenhower did, what Obama did. So they all stand for certain things. I mean, even Trump stood for certain. I don't know what Biden is standing for other than tripping off the steps to Air Force One. But that's the reality of our world. So, A, you are born with a name. That is where the process of personal branding starts. B, I've also said this in my book, Get to the Top. You are what you make yourself to be. The world is not going to ascribe feathers to you or do something for you. You have to do it yourself. So you have to decide how you would like to embellish your life. So I was born and raised in Calcutta. And for us, what was most important was not where you came from, how much money you had, what caste you belonged to, but it was how much you knew. So there was always the impetus, the imperative, and the focus on embellishing your knowledge, and embellishing your knowledge from a perspective of not impressing other people, but continuously being in thirst, non-quenchable thirst of knowledge, to my mind, is one of the underlying principles of personal branding. They can take away life and limb, they can take away your money, they can take away anything, but they can't take away your intrinsic knowledge. So that, to my mind, is a very important aspect. The third, which is a critical thing, to my mind, is as you go on in life, you are entitled to change your perspectives. You're entitled to change your opinions. I mean, look at Mother Teresa. When she came, her thing was, I'm not going to create the missionaries of charity to help people live, but I'm going to give people who are dying a death of dignity. I will not allow people to die on street sides or on footpaths. I will have people die with the dignity that they were born with. So if you look at the branding of what I call iconic personal brands across the world, no matter what genre you come from, it is always in terms of two things: belief and the way they have acted. So there could be someone who believes in something but doesn't act. You'd never know. It's the constant debate between idea and implementation. I will never know the power of an idea unless it's implemented. I mean, you can have a great idea, but it'll be in your mind. It's like a ship in the night. It sails, but no one sees it. So the elements of personal branding which have a frontal attitude towards society must be like ships that sail during the day. You see their giganticism, you see their elegance, and you see their focus in terms of how they sail.
And few make it. Few make it. Not everybody is able to leverage.
Yeah, but again, success is not measured in my mind by who you are or how much you make, but it's about how comfortable you are in your own skin. I think my mother is an extremely successful person, but do you know her name? No. But it doesn't matter. I know who she is. I know the value she has imparted. I know what she has taught me. I know what my late father stood for. I know what my wife stands for. So I'm least bothered about what people think. The worry, Vivek, is that we confuse personal branding with popular branding. And that is where people then begin to make compromises. In order to be popular, I want to adjust to societal pressures, to peer pressure. You don't need to. And remember, I'm an old believer in this. I've had many controversies. I've had a life where people have abused, blah, blah. I don't give a toss because I know what I've done is what I believed was the right thing. If it was wrong in someone's eyes, perhaps I will respect that, but I did not do it for a lack of integrity. I may have done it for a lack of knowledge. So admission is not necessarily a virtue in personal branding because you can't please everyone. I can't tell you, Vivek, I think that, Obama is this, because you might have a contrarian view. Why would I waste oxygen, which, by the way, is in short supply in any case in our country, on convincing you when I don't need to convince you? The debate that we are having across the world about liberal versus illiberal. The liberals are calling people illiberal. That just shows how illiberal they are. Because liberalism, at the heart of liberalism, is the acceptance of contrarianism, is the acceptance of dichotomies that may exist in views, that may exist in scholastic thinking. If you go back into how the Fabian Society was created in England, when you had diverse people from a Bernard Shaw to a Bertrand Russell. And these were people who created what they did. Or for instance, closer home in IPTA, when we had the Indian Professional Theatre Association. And that IPTA was created in order for people to actually express themselves, from which spawned legendary people like Badal Sarkar, Habib Tanveer, where you use street theatre. So it's important to have knowledge for two reasons. Knowledge allows you to give context. Knowledge allows you to buttress and substantiate your views, should there ever be a reason to substantiate, not for the outer world, but for yourself.
And I think in one of your books, you also say that knowledge is the fodder for the information-driven media and the society that we live in. So
absolutely. The first chapter in my Get to the Top book, I say that in order to be interesting, you have to be interested. Because if you're not interested, you'll never be interested. And I'm not saying everyone must be a literature student like I was, or everyone must be a history student like I was. I'm not suggesting that. But whatever you do, even if it is reading Tatler or Esquire, if it is quoting from Shakespeare or Vijay Tendulkar, the ability to cross must be only possible and will be only possible if you're genuinely interested in it. If I'm only doing it to impress Vivek, there's no passion. Remember, the problem with society at large, and this is a historical fact, we either have passion or we have process. Where you merge passion with process, you get more comprehensive and a more holistic picture, which is what you need.
Well said.
So it's a big segue to what I was just thinking in my mind. It's good to have knowledge. You should know about, knowledge is power, the whole saying. But how to apply this knowledge in the right context, depending on where you are. We see a lack of that amongst today's generation a lot, especially in the employment sector. People who are looking for jobs, the fresh graduates that are coming out. I want to shift a little bit towards professionals. What would you have, for fresh graduates? What do you want to tell our educators, our corporations, and most importantly, the freshers who are launching their careers to care about while they are looking at their personal brand? I mean, they have the knowledge, they have certifications, all of that, but they're not employable. The employability rate is fallen to 47% this year. So from a personal branding perspective, what message or what points do you have for them?
So the concept of branding per se, and now I'm wearing my marketing hat, is
Yes.
brands. No one buys brands. You buy benefits. You don't buy Tide. You buy the whitest wash. You don't go to the marketplace and buy a Black & Decker drill. You buy the whole. The drill is a means to the whole. Now, all those Johnnies who are looking for jobs are the ones who will make the fundamental mistake because their vision is tunnel vision. They're looking at a job. They're not looking at life. Now, it's easy for me to say that. They're not looking at careers. They're looking at a job. They're looking at a salary sheet, not at a validation sheet. If you change that idea in your head, then you will see that EdMyst will actually become Knowledge Mist without you having changing the name. Because what you're doing is, see, education is structural. Knowledge is enduring. Your education will stop when you leave college or when you leave the polytechnic or whatever the hell you do. But knowledge is enduring. The biggest mistake we make is we believe life is about milestones. It never is. In Hinduism, we talk about the 7-year cycle. Yeah. And then we talk about, the various cycles of life per se. Knowledge is eternal. And knowledge is unquenchable. You can never say that I know everything.
Correct.
Today, if you or I were from birth to only copy what Rabindranath Tagore did, we would not be able to do it in our lifetime. Not because he was a polymath alone or Da Vinci, but because of the purposefulness of his life. So it's very important for you to understand. Now, the tragedy is in our structured education courses, and this is a problem with HR departments in the corporate world as well. You have idiots on both sides. So you have idiots in the HR department. I hope some of them are listening, and you have idiots who are looking for jobs. So it's a marriage of stupidity. It's not a marriage of intellect. The HR guy has to fulfill his role because he's in a job. He's not in a career. His role says, I must have 2 BTech, 3 MTech, and 1 chap who's a Charlie boy who will come into the mailroom. Doesn't work like that. Number 2, it's not so much in America, but in India, we're very castigating of failure. We punish failure. If that was the case, Steve Jobs, if he was Indian, he would have never made it to Apple. Google would have never been created. Hewlett-Packard would have never taken birth. So you have to understand that when on both sides of the spectrum, people who are looking for employment, which you call employment, but I call careers, and people who are hiring people in order to make their companies grow, must recognize that superficial structured degrees will not change anything. David Ogilvy famously said, the legendary advertising man, he says, if you want to become a company of giants, hire people who are better than you. If you hire people who are inferior than you, you become a company of dwarfs. The tragedy is dwarfism is another word for insecurity. So it is always the case where the person hiring you will say, yeah, ye to bahut sharp hai, he's very sharp. He won't fit in. We are very scared of disruption. Yeah. The world is very scared of turbulence. We are very scared. We love disruption in marketing, but we hate disruption in what we call our edified structures. And unless disruption happens, none of these other things will happen. So if you, as educators or people who are enabling people, you must also re-examine your role. You are an enabler. You are not a provider. There's only one provider. You call him God, you call him, if you're an atheist, you call him this, whatever you call him. Otherwise, we are all enablers. Remember, religion, if you go back into the history of religion, of theology, that was also an invention of modern man. You tell me, have you ever seen God? No. The only time you see God is when you're drunk at a bar and fall on your face. And that's when you remember God. But otherwise, I don't know of any living man who's actually seen God. Even Jesus went around saying, I'm the Son of God. He never said, I'm God. So if you go into Indian mythology, no one said, Main Bhagwan hu. Yeah. Ram never. No God would go into banishment or into exile. So these are all stupid notions that have been created by people who wanted societies to conform and to cloister and to be controlled. You must allow people to be free. It's not about the famous Tagore saying where the mind is without fear, the head held high, blah, blah, blah. No. Unfettered minds are the ones that are the most creative. Society has a way of fettering everything. Knowledge cannot be securitized. Knowledge cannot be a thing that you swipe your card in when you're getting into Manhattan elevators. No, it has to be completely unique and completely different.
So one of the things we are doing in EdMyst is actually demystifying education. And that's exactly one of the purposes. And I didn't mean this to be a plug for EdMyst.
And change the name, call it EdMyst.
It's just demystifying education.
No, I'm saying change the name. So if I were you, I would put it ulta and I would have DE mist. So for the conforming jokers, they would call it EdMyst. For the non-conformists, they would call it DMyst. See, I've given you an easy brand. Or have a slogan, EdMyst, demystifying knowledge.
Perfect.
Perfect.
So just shifting a little bit, Suhel, a little bit in terms of your personal brand. And I've read your book and I've really, noted down some of the very strongest statements you have made. And you make a special reference to Ram Ray, your mentor. Would love to hear, because you made a transition from being who you were to who you are. And you have continued to build upon those values, the principles, and what you have learned during your association in response, the team that Ram co-founded or founded. So a little bit in terms of what helped you break through the mold of an old traditional classical Suhel Seth to who he is today. What helped you to push that?
So while I have all the time and I will explain Ram's contribution, I must also say that my parents played the biggest role by not interfering in my life. Okay, they allowed me to do what the hell I wanted to do. In the sense, when people my age at that time in Calcutta were partying, our parties would end at 8 p.m. with beer. So there was no major stuff going on. I would be spending hours and hours at British Council for two reasons. Number one, in those days, British Council was the only place in Calcutta which had video recorders. And I'm a keen theatre enthusiast. And I would want to go and see, the BBC TV plays, whether it was Julius Caesar, Hamlet, blah, 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 Arms and the Man, whatever. And I would read 4 books every 2 days because you had to return those 4 books. Otherwise, you'd be charged 1 rupee as a late fine. Okay. So that was my life. It was a life of my choosing. What did I do? I hated playing sport by and large because I said, why the hell should I play sport when I can do other things? So I took to what I call theater, debating, elocution, just a minute, all of those things. And by the grace of whoever, one excelled in those. So it was a very different world. But here's what happened, and that's very important. I was the same person who went to response and came out of response. The embellishment that Ram gave me, which is seminal in my life, was tangential thinking. It was not Edward de Bono. It was Ram Ray. Ram Ray allowed me to be rude to clients who were equally stupid. He didn't say, oh, you have to follow a structure. He allowed me to be who I am. The point that I made earlier. He did not make me force fit into an advertising mold. When I wanted to play Bhutto, which I acted in as Bhutto by Ayaz Johar, Ram Ray designed the invite. Now, normally bosses would say, oh, work hard, work hard. He taught me the values of good eating. Because he says, we live to eat. We don't eat to live. Some jokers think we eat to live. No, I live to eat. I live to drink. So what Ram did was, he kind of simplified life. But please remember, before Ram, I was already on the debating circuit in Calcutta. I was already in the theater circuit. So it's not that I was not known. I was already doing this Agony Uncle column, survival strategies in the Telegraph. So, and all that was on my own dint. There was no godfather saying, oh, now you do this. So the second lesson that I learned was there will never be, and there never is a godfather. So I'm going to say something really controversial on your show right now. There is no such thing as a mentor. You have to be your own mentor. There are enablers. There are people who clear the woods for you so that you can walk. It's very Frostian, Robert Frostian-like. you have to ultimately take the path less traveled. Your mentor is not going to take that path.
But do you think
what the mentor, or you call mentor, or the enabler, is only a person who is showing you various options, but you choose the option.
But do you think they still play a critical role? The coach, the mentor?
I don't, this coach, I mean, I hate to say this, it's interesting. It didn't work for me because I would always question the thing. But yes, I have seen zillions of people who have had tremendous mentors and they've stayed the course. Ratan Tata had a great mentor in GRD. And Ratan is who he is, not because of GRD, but also because of GRD. Mukesh Ambani had a great mentor in his father. Anand Mahindra had a great mentor in his uncle, Keshav. So you've had a situation where people have had great mentors. You call them mentors, I call them people who are guiding lights. They are people who don't interfere. See, it's very important to remember one thing, Vivek. I cannot change your DNA. I must function within the purview of your DNA. The moment I change your DNA, I will alter the brand per se, because then I'm tinkering with the formulation. You must only tinker, if at all, to embellish the benefit, not the formulation.
The only point I'm going to make, a little agreeing and disagreeing to what you're saying, Suhel, is, and I'm likening it to the battle that we are fighting on the ground and the trenches with the corona thing. There is somebody who's administering a vaccine that is creating and tinkering with the formulation inside with the RNA to create the counterforce to fight that virus. Do we need that kind of a vaccine, someone administering that vaccine into our systems? Because sometimes we refuse to think that we can be different. Sometimes we refuse to recognize what a great potential I may have as an individual in the context I operate in. But do you think I need someone for that?
Life is not a virus. So to compare life to corona in itself is defeatist. I would not say life per se is a virus. These guys are doing everything to control a virus. Life is not a disease. Pharma companies have to address disease management. We have to address human escalation. We have to address human enhancement, human contribution, welfare towards a larger society, the concept of giving back. So yes and no. But the point I'm making is, don't think that the coach and the mentor will be deliverers. Even God is not a deliverer if you believe in God. But you have to do what you have to do.
They may help you to remove blind spots that you may have, or remove help you be self-aware sometimes. Because if somebody tells you, only then you know, right?
Yeah, with due respect to Vivek, these are great American concepts because they need to be busy and, to use your phrase, employed. I don't know, you need to use the cobwebs and all, which is why I'm saying self-help is primary. If you have clarity in your head, all these other things will follow. My point with mentorship or coaching in its blind sense, I completely agree with what Vivek said, but in its blind sense is, then we outsource our life and we create a level of dependency which is not good. Because then what will happen is, let's say Vivek Gupta has 30 people he's coaching. There aren't 30 Vivek Guptas. There's only one Vivek Gupta. But there's a danger of 30 little Viveks walking out of the door. Because he can't change for every individual. But then 30 guys walk out of the door saying exactly what he says. Is that a good thing? No. Human beings by nature are not meant to be cookie cutters in their either description or in their work ethos. So, yes, what Vivek will be able to do is he'll be able to do the shifting sands theory, as it were. So he'll be able to tell people, okay, I don't think you need to do that. I don't. But that he's talking from experience. That he's saying from expertise. That he's also saying, having learned from the mistakes that he believes were mistakes, either with people he was coaching or with himself. So yes, there is a role, and there is a role for an EdMyst. There is a role for, but I'm saying, even when you're doing this business as you are and you're doing it so well, remember that the focus, the responsibility, and the accountability must rest on the recipient, not on the giver.
100% agree with you. So just bringing it a little bit more closer home. By the way, I consider India as the home base, and everything is about India at this point. And I'm just going to bring it closer to something which we are very passionate about, our cricket team. Just take the most topical. Rishabh Pant is different from Shubman Gill. Shubman Gill is different from Natarajan, but they had a great coach in Rahul Dravid, who needs no introduction. Rahul Dravid did not make Natarajan become a Rishabh Pant or Rishabh Pant become a Prithvi Shaw. They're all playing their own individual strengths. They're playing and they're having a stellar, career in front of them, and God bless them all. But there was a person who instigated, who showed them their strengths. And that is the point we are trying to make, is a coach can actually help you come out of your denial, and make you more self-aware about who you are, what's inside you that can actually be maximized to make you a better version of yourself. And that's where we are headed towards.
So you call him a coach. I don't follow cricket. So all these names are irrelevant to me, other than Dravid, who I know, but I don't follow cricket. I think there are enough people in this country following cricket, and God bless them. But I just want to take off from where you left. A coach is a coach in lexicon terms. But for me, a genuine coach is one who is an ecosystem in his or her own right. That ecosystem allows nurturing, nourishing, and flourishing. It's nurturing, nourishing, and flourishing. The flourishing aspect is a byproduct, but you must allow the nurturing and the nourishing. And I think what Rahul has done is he has not implanted himself. He has not made them people like him. Forget what you rightly said, that they're not like each other either. But he's also not made them out to be him. The problem largely, both with parenting and with coaching, is we don't know the difference between ecosystem and cloning. We at times make the mistake of cloning those who are under us or those who are with us to say that I know best. So yes, role models are very important as we step out in life, but those role models needn't be drawn from the same area of work that I'm entering. Why should my role model in marketing be Peter Drucker? No. My role model of marketing could be Mahatma Gandhi, who used every trick in the book without social media, without print media, without television, but yet got an entire nation to galvanize and seek freedom from the Brits. So it depends on how you look at life and how you look at structure, which then ultimately makes you who you are. And ultimately, Vivek, we are all individuals with a high level of individualism. Selfishness, which is not greed or avarice related, but is related to protecting your turfs of either knowledge or principles or value, is an important tool in developing the personal brand.
So staying on that topic just for a quick minute, Suhel, we were interacting in a three-dimensional space before these disturbing times, before Corona has hit us, right? So we would exchange emotions, we would exchange empathy, and we will have a different appreciation of the individual on the other side of the interaction. Now the interactions have shrunk into two-dimensional. Now it's our expressions, face, hands, gestures that convey passion, energy, affection, and everything else that comes with that. In such a situation, and I don't know if this is going to be our new normal forever or it's going to go through its own evolution, but I hope we stay humans. We still are able to appreciate the emotional quality of the interactions. Do you see a point where we have to introspect deeper on what soft skills are going to be all about? Do you see that personal branding will have a whole different level of reinforcement on the soft skill aspect of a person? Because there were multiple facets, multiple tools available earlier in the way we interacted, but now the things are changing. So do you see a certain movement differently going forward?
No. Human beings are restless beings. It's not for nothing that it was said, no man is an island. We thrive on social interactions, and that will happen. It will take time. So where I completely agree with you, and I hope people are building on those, people should go back to what they love, not love what they're forced to do. Sometimes we love what we are forced to do. You should never love your job. You should love your life. The mistake is all these Johnnies who go for interviews say, oh, I love my job. I love my job. Bullshit. You shouldn't be loving your job. You should be loving theater. You should be loving the arts. You're loving Renoir. You should be loving Picasso, Bikash Bhattacharya, Ganesh Pine, Bocelli, Sahid Ludhianvi. Why the hell would you bloody love your job? And that, to my mind, is the defining purpose. See, this is a time for reset, rejuvenate, recalibrate. It's a time for personal renewal. Introspection all makes you feel Buddha-like. So I don't want to use, will people start introspecting? Bullshit. The day things are normal, people be out at bars, there'll be pub crawling, bar fights, all that, which tells you the world is back to normal. It's a good thing. It should happen. But the critical point is how we utilize this time. So let me give you a personal example. Our daughter was born on November 26, 2019. The pandemic hit us in March. I always see a silver cloud on every lining. Forget a silver lining on every cloud. I've had the best time. I've revisited nursery rhymes. I've retrained my singing prowess. I'm spending hours and hours when I'm not on Zoom calls, charmed into persuasion by you and Aparna. And I love it. I'm recording audio books. I'm doing Shakespeare play recordings. I'm reading insanely as again. So I'm enjoying this time. I don't feel claustrophobic or sequestered or cloistered or, under any duress. So it's who you are and what you make of what you've got. The problem is we see a crisis in every adversity. I'm saying switch that. See an opportunity in adversity for the simple reason the adversity has happened. You can't undo it. Not even Biden, not even Kamala Devi Harris, no one. So what you've got to work with. Now, there are only two ways. Either you're a crybaby, a sulkpot, or someone who's always whining, or you say, to hell with it. I always give the example of India, especially to American audiences who, other than the American Indians, are not of great intellectual worth. And I always tell them, what's happening to India? Bad scene here. I said, India is like the bumblebee. Aerodynamically, the bumblebee is not supposed to fly because of its size. But the bumblebee doesn't know that, so it flies happily. We've got to be the bumblebee.
So ignorance is bliss?
No, ignorance is not bliss. Because I've already paraphrased that by saying you will have intrinsic knowledge if you concentrate on all the stuff that I've told you. What is bliss is not wanting popular or peer approval. Because if you go for all of that, then you're dead. Then you'll become like everyone else. Which, by the way, may be a good thing for a lot of people. A lot of people don't want to upset the apple cart, which is fine. They'll remain apple sellers for the rest of their lives. So you have to decide. Ultimately in life, do you want to be the apple seller or do you want to be the orchard? There's greater delight in being the orchard.
I think there is a greater delight in actually, I thought you would say the greater delight is in actually, getting the benefits from the orchard for all the apples.
That, obviously, when I say owner of the orchard, of course you'll get the benefits, hopefully.
Good. One quick question though, Suhel, in terms of, a lot of people look up to you as a mentor, as a coach, and I know you said that you are your best mentor, your best coach, but you are touching a lot of lives yourself, right? Did you have to change your style, or did you see them changing their style to be able to meet with this situation? The reason I say this, because Aparna threw a very important metric in the beginning of this conversation. We were reading a recent report which said the employability, and I'm going to use the same word for the sake of this argument, the employability was for fresh graduates in the country, and when I say country means India, it was at it's a shocking low of 48% in 2018. 2019, it dipped even by one more point to 47%. Everything sounds great, but when it comes to earning their livelihood on a day-to-day basis, whether you have to be an apple seller or an orchard owner, there are tough choices people are making. What do we tell to them about their personal brand? What is it that they need to do on a very concrete and a tangible level so that they can actually put food on the table?
So that's a great question. And I will end by that because we've got about 5 more minutes. That's a great question. When Manmohan Singh was the Prime Minister, Ram Dorai, who was the former chairman of TCS, and I were drafted to work on something called the National Skills Development Program.
Mhm.
And the line that I gave was, Hunar hai to qadar hai. If you have talent, you should be respected. We are trying to outlive, manage, obliterate years of societal thinking, which was focused on degrees and not on a degree of evolution. The problem is it will take us a while to travel. So to answer your question, why is there a dip? 3 reasons. Number one, job shrinkages have happened because more and more people are looking outside what I call the organized sector, which you guys must be tracking. Number two, the pandemic has caused further job losses. Number three, there is a greater impetus and focus on people getting into entrepreneurial areas, people doing non-conformist jobs, or what we would call jobs. And I see it'll bounce back. But for me, this is a great inflection point for India's youth, because never have Indian youth been more confident, been more capable, and been more free of the shackles of societal pressure to follow the path that they wish to follow. You know, there's an excellent book which you must read and you must give it to all your people. It's on this famous Indian philosopher of recent time called Jiddu Krishnamurti. And the book was written by one of his ardent disciples, followers, call her what you wish, Popul Jaikar. And the title of the book is The Seer Who Walks Alone. And the reason why I end this conversation on that note is we always walk alone, but we can choose the ecosystem that we wish to walk in. You can either walk on cobble paths, on gravel, on tar, on grass. You decide. I must never have an issue with the path that you take. I may have an issue with why you took the path. So that, to my mind, is basically what it is.
Suhel Seth, thank you very much for talking to us. It was excellent. Always love your firebrand thoughts. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you, Suhel. Thank you.
Bye, Aparna.
Have
Bye.
a good day.
Bye.
Bye.